Welcome to the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee, and today is Monday, May 26th. It is a holiday weekend. That only means recruits are really out on the road taking visits. There was a lot of action going down all across America, and we are here to react to it all today on the show. But first, you guys do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we want you to be a part of it. Jump on board, hit subscribe. So today, we're going to focus on a little rivalry recruiting. We're going to talk Ohio State. Then we'll talk Michigan. We're going to go down to Texas, talk some Longhorn recruiting as well. Big show. Let's get to it. We're talking Michigan flip targets today, but first, the staff was on the road, and they saw five-star running back Savion Hyder. Now, E.J. Holland with the Wolverine, we're going to talk about Savion Hyder real quick because he's expected at Ohio State this weekend for an official visit. I think the Buckeyes have a little ground to make up. Where do you see Michigan in this recruitment? Are they the front runner?
Yeah, Michigan's been considered the front runner for several months now. I think this recruitment has grown tighter, I guess. Michigan obviously had basically a month-long self-imposed contact ban where they couldn't reach out to Hyder or any other recruits. So other schools obviously took advantage of that. On top of that, Michigan hasn't gotten Hyder on campus recently. He made it out to Tennessee and Ohio State in the spring. Yeah. He made a surprise visit to Tennessee over the weekend. And I've always considered Tennessee a real dark horse here. I remember having discussions with our national analyst, Chad Simmons, a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, hey, man, don't, put Tennessee out of the picture. I think Tennessee's a real contender. He shows up at Tennessee again, and you can see that the Volunteers are gaining steam. They get him on campus for his last OV. I think a lot's been made about Ohio State and their push this spring, but Tennessee is the school I think I'm the most concerned about right now. Now, we'll see if that changes once he makes his Ohio State visit this weekend. But I still overall think Michigan is in a strong position. They have a long-standing relationship with Hyder and his family. Hyder went on the record and said Michigan was his number one school in the winter. Tony Alford, Michigan's running backs coach, has been recruiting Hyder since he was, like a freshman. They've had a relationship for several years. Alford has a strong relationship with his family, with his NIL agent, Adam McCann. So I think that, if Michigan talks numbers this summer and puts together a strong NIL deal, the relationships, the fit, the way they utilize the running back position will all be easy selling points for Hyder, and the Wolverines can regain the momentum once they get him back on campus here in June. So I think this recruitment will be decided here during these official visits as schools talk about the business side as well. So, we'll see. But I think Michigan remains, at the top, if not still, one of those top schools in this recruitment.
Yeah, to your point, I think you can feel Michigan recruiting starting to heat up as these coaches got back on the road. It kind of felt like there was a little lull when they weren't allowed to have that contact. Now they are. Now it's official visit season. Things are about to heat up. And we got some flip targets to talk about, namely Havon Finney, one of the top DBs in America, made an early commitment to LSU, but there's some Michigan buzz there, EJ.
Yeah, definitely. Our other reporter, Ethan McDowell, went out to California, spent some time with the Finney family, and they were very open about their interest in Michigan. And this is one the Wolverines have been working hard on for several months. They got him on campus in the spring. They're not going to back down against LSU. They flipped five-star quarterback Bryce Underwood away from LSU last cycle, so they have no problem going head-to-head with the Tigers for someone who's already committed there. I think with Havon Finney, you look at last cycle and what secondary coach Lamar Morgan was able to do. He flipped Shamari Earls from Georgia. He flipped Jordan Young from Clemson. He is more than capable of flipping Finney away from LSU. I think he's done a great job of building a relationship with Finney and the family. He went out to California to see him once that contact ban that we talked about came to an end. So last week, I think they had a positive meeting there. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on campus for an official visit. That Finney commitment to LSU was not necessarily out of the blue, but a little surprising in terms of the timing. So I think that, an official visit to Michigan this summer is definitely in the cards. And yeah, like you mentioned, Michigan isn't afraid to go after flip targets. They built their class largely on flips last cycle.
Yeah.
So we'll see how things progress with Finney.
So who else you got right now in that group of flip targets that Michigan's eyeing up?
Yeah, there are several, flip targets still on the board this weekend. They're getting in a recruit committed elsewhere, and that's Shadarius Tootle on
Yeah.
300 linebacker who's committed to Auburn. He's long been a top target for the Wolverines. Brian Jean Mary, Michigan's linebacker coach, has done a terrific job of building up a relationship with him. Georgia made a big impression, probably has the momentum with Tootle right now, but Michigan's still pushing hard for that flip. They offered a couple of new flip targets on the road this last week. They're going after Nebraska cornerback commit CJ Brona, who is close to being a top 100 guy, blazing track times, ran a
Yeah.
10.24 100-meter. Michigan really values speed at the corner position, so he's going to turn into a top target. They offered Illinois wide receiver commit Kenyon Alston this past week as well. Michigan looking to get him on campus for an official visit. They actually hosted him last summer for an unofficial visit, so there was already familiarity there. And we talked about Haven Finney. He's not the only flip target in the secondary. Michigan's still working on Clemson defensive back commit Shavar Young. They're still working on Notre Dame defensive back commit Chasten Smith. So a couple of other flip targets in the secondary as well. I think that, the Wolverines, like I said, they've had a history of being able to flip guys late, especially last cycle. I think they can do the same this cycle.
All right. Well, all this flip talk got me thinking, where's Michigan going to finish? They're currently sitting at 19 overall, and I'm thinking they're going to finish way better than that. Do you think this is going to be a top 5 class or top 10 class? Where do you think Michigan settles in?
It all depends on how business goes this summer. You have to talk guaranteed numbers, and that's something I'm writing about in my column this afternoon. It's time for Michigan to shift their NIL philosophy back to what it was towards the end of last cycle. Obviously, they put together big NIL deals for guys like a Bryce Underwood, like Ty Haywood, who essentially flipped from Alabama late last cycle. Those were big NIL wins for Michigan. So far this cycle, the Wolverines have given baselines. They've talked about how they value different guys. Certain recruits have been patient with Michigan's approach, but the Wolverines haven't talked guaranteed exact numbers as they wait for court rulings and rev share to play out. But it's crunch time. It's official visit season. You have to talk exact numbers. Other schools, other blue bloods from around the country are doing so. And you have to keep in mind, Michigan once had a transformational over transactional approach to recruiting. So last cycle was their first top 10 class since 2022. The 2023 2024 classes did not finish in the top 10. So if Michigan is going to put together another top 10 class, if they're going to try to creep into that top 5 like they did last cycle where they finished number 6 just outside the top 5, it all comes down to NIL. This is the NIL era. You have to talk numbers. So we'll see if that happens this summer.
All right. Well, Michigan fans, let's talk numbers. Where do you think the Wolverines will finish? Top 3, top 5, top 10? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Ohio State recruiting. Official visits are going to take place in June, and there's some big ones on the slate. But first, I got Alex Gleitman here. I want to talk about Xavier Griffin, the former 5-star USC commitment, decommitted. He's from the state of Georgia, so he's back on the market. There's been a lot of buzz around Alabama, but there's also a lot of buzz around Ohio State. How do you see this shaking out early with him putting himself back on the market?
Yeah, I think this one was a little surprising to see Ohio State mentioned for kind of the national audience, but James Laurinaitis has been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to try and get Ohio State into this one. Obviously, the decommitment from USC. I still think Ohio State does have work to go. They'll bring him in on an official visit this upcoming weekend, and I think right now I'd have to say Alabama is probably the team to beat coming into official visits. I know Texas is in there as well.
Hmm.
Georgia, the home state school, obviously isn't going to go away without a fight. But I would say Ohio State probably running third, maybe
Okay.
second at best case scenario coming
Yeah.
into the official visit. And, look, he opened up his recruitment. I don't think he opened it up with the intent of knowing exactly where he's going to go. I think he's going to give all four of the schools I mentioned a fair shake, and we'll see how official visits go because you know how those could be needle movers.
Yeah, I get that vibe too. I think it's early for Xavier Griffin. I think these visits are going to be huge. I think when we're done with these visits, we'll have probably a different view of his recruitment. All right, let's move on to another top linebacker on that board. That's Tyler Atkinson. This one's heating up. How do you feel about where Ohio State sits? Because depending on who you talk to, it's Georgia, but maybe it's not Georgia. And if it's not Georgia, I think it's Ohio State.
Yeah, I think the same way. Ohio State's been there since day one. I mean, since he was a freshman or coming into his freshman year in high school, they've been there since day one. He's visited, I've lost count. I mean, maybe double digit times he's been to Columbus. He's been there a lot. And the relationship is deep with Ryan Day, with James Laurinaitis. I think, the opportunity to have come in the spring and sit down with Matt Patricia, the new defensive coordinator, really impressed him. Obviously, the NFL pedigree and showing him how he would use him in his defense and get him to the next level. So I think coming out of the spring visit he made to Columbus, there was a lot of feeling inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center that maybe just maybe that he wasn't a lock to Georgia like everyone's thought, and that maybe even Ohio State might be the team with the very slight edge as we enter official visit season. But I think these official visits are going to be key. I think that the question still has to be answered: is NIL going to be the thing that drives it? Because if it is, it's not going to be Georgia or Ohio State. I don't think. Not that those two schools won't make competitive offers, but I don't think either of those schools will have
The
the
top
largest
offer.
offer. So
Yeah.
knowing Tyler Atkinson for 3 years or so now, I think he's going to make a decision. NIL obviously is going to be important as it is in almost every recruitment, but I don't think the decision is just going to be made on largest offer. I think he's going to be looking at a number of things. So I agree with you, Josh. Ohio State and Georgia is right now. I mean, things can change, but that's how I kind of see it coming down
Hmm.
toward the end of the summer when I think a decision should come.
All right, a couple more interesting recruitments coming into focus at the edge position. Luke Wafel and Carter Meadows, both elite edges, narrow their list of offers down, and Ohio State makes the list for each of them. So who do you think Ohio State has a better shot at right now?
I have to say Luke Wafel. I think that Carter Meadows is one. Not that I'm totally surprised Ohio State was in his top four, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone felt that Ohio State was like even in the one or two spot, even though he had a really good spring visit. But they're right probably where they need to be entering official visits. I think officials are going to be really big for him. But Luke Wafel, I think the spring visit he made to Columbus was a needle mover. I think Ohio State, some felt maybe he was, they were even in maybe pole position coming out of that visit. If not, it's probably them in Penn State at the top. I know Texas has reason for optimism as well, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel that even though his brother's at Penn State right now, that I mean, he saw. I think the good thing is he saw with his brother who went to Michigan that it doesn't always work out exactly. Going the first place you go. He's maybe a little bit different, better prospect, but I think that he's going to make his own decision. Is my bottom line. I think Ohio State has a better shot right now with Wafel than they do with Meadows, but maybe after these official visits, you feel a little bit differently. We'll see.
All right. Now, when we talk about the running back position, you had a great insider piece up on Letterman Row. You guys can go read that. One of the things you took on was the running back position, and it's clear Ohio State wants to take a pair. So, what are the odds that number one running back Savion Hyder is part of that pair of running backs that Ohio State takes?
Yeah, I don't like the percentage game. I guess if you have to put a percentage on it, I'd say it's somewhere between 25 and 30% right now. I think he likes Ohio State. But I think right now, Michigan and Tennessee, I know pretty much for a fact that the offers from those schools are going to be higher. I'm not saying that that's an automatic, for Savion Hyder to kind of go there, but I think that's going to help them because obviously he has great relationships there as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say Michigan, Tennessee now kind of being the school that's surging, but Ohio State gets him on campus this coming weekend for an official
Yeah.
visit. They had a great spring visit where I felt like it was them and the Wolverines kind of neck and neck. So they're going to give it their best shot. Carlos Lachlan, he's their number one guy. Like Carlos Lachlan is not going to stop until he signs with another school, but I think we'll know a little bit more after this weekend exactly how Ohio State feels about their chances. They felt decently coming out of the spring visit. Now coming into the summer officials, how do they feel? But They're in it. They're in
Yeah.
it for sure.
Well, here's how I see it. Maybe a little. What you said, I feel, is true today. But like, if you take kind of a step back, I think Ohio State has continually throughout this offseason gotten in a better position for Savion Hyder. So I see it as like this recruitment that might be growing into this official visit that's going to happen this weekend, and maybe coming out of here, we could feel a little bit differently about Savion Hyder because it seems like it's trending that way to me.
Yeah, I mean, and look, they strategically plan these official visits with the running back targets that they had in a certain order. They have 4 top targets for the 2 spots, and Savion Hyder, Favor Key, Carson Baker, and Derek Cooper. And they're in that order every single weekend, one of them. And I think they wanted Hyder first to kind of understand where they stood coming out of that visit so that they can figure out how to manage the potential for potentially 2 of those guys wanting to come into the class. So I think you're dead on. We'll kind of know a little bit more after this coming weekend exactly how real Ohio State is as a contender here.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting weekend. All right, let's wrap it up with this. Will Ohio State sign a quarterback in 2026? So far, none committed.
Yeah, I mean, I would be absolutely stunned if they did not sign a quarterback. I think they've just been trying to figure out who that guy is. I don't think they think the quarterback class is particularly deep this year with Ohio State caliber guys. Obviously, they liked a few guys, Jared Curtis, Dia Bell. I don't think that they feel great. Certainly not Curtis. I don't think they feel great about their chances flipping Bell from Texas, even though there still is dialogue there. But the guy that you have to watch, Steve Wilfong, was first to report the interest, and then Letterman Row, we reported the official visit, which will be June 20th to 22nd, is Luke Fahey out of Mission Viejo High School in California. And Ohio State signed Phillip Bell out of that program last year, wide receiver. They got to watch his quarterback a lot. They really like Luke Fahey. I know Stanford, Indiana are 2 schools that are battling right now for him, but Ohio State's getting the official visit without even having offered. And it seems like if all goes well on that visit, it's almost like a 2-way interview. If all goes well and both sides feel like there's a fit, I wouldn't be completely surprised if Ohio State ends up offering Luke Fahey and he ends up being the quarterback in this class.
All right, Buckeye fans, talk to us. How you feeling heading into official visit season? Who's your top target? Let us know. We're talking Texas recruiting with my man Justin Wells of Inside Texas. Now, you were on the road last week, and one of the top prospects you went to go see in person was Vodney Cleveland. We saw some predictions rolling in for the Horns. However, I'm over on Gators Online on the On3 network, and their insiders also feel pretty good about Cleveland. So is this shaping up to be a 2-team battle here?
I don't think it's a 2-team because I also think Georgia looks pretty good here too. And Miami, I believe, is going to get his last OV. So I'm not shooting down the Hurricanes yet. But just from my time in at Parker High School in Birmingham, Alabama, also Vodney Cleveland, just what a great kid. Very, very, very soft-spoken, quiet monster. I mean, just everyone in that school talks up about Vodney Cleveland, and for good reason. Had a great time with him. I think it's probably Texas and Florida are going to be the 2 that are battling, because just by talking to him, those were the 2 teams that were mentioned the most. I think Florida, because they had a head start. They've had they started the relationship before Texas did. They were in the mix when he was committed to Alabama back in the day. And so Florida and Florida's doing a good job on the trail this cycle. I've seen a ton of kids that are talking up UF and Billy Napier. And so they're doing a great job. But, man, he loves Kenny Baker, the defensive line coach at Texas. And he's been to Austin twice this year so far. He'll be back for his official visit in mid-June. The thing about Vodney is, I said, is there anything in particular you're looking for, or anything that stands out? And he flat out said he's never seen an environment or an atmosphere like Texas before. He just had never seen that. He could rattle off 3 or 4 different Texas defensive linemen that he watched in a scrimmage. Like, he was paying so much attention. Kenny Baker has done a tremendous job in this recruitment. It started around January of this year. Baker's already been there a few times. Baker was there a day before I was there last week. And so I think you could say Texas, Florida, Horns, and Gators are going to chomp this one out. But Georgia's still in the mix. Not going to shortchange those guys. I think Miami's still in the mix. They can throw some big NIL at you. I think NIL will be a factor in this ultimately. But I left with a strong vibe for Texas. I think the Horns are in a great spot there. The biggest key for me with Vodney was, I'm going to visit Texas in mid-June, and then I'm going to make a decision in mid-late June.
Right.
Like he's ready. He's ready. I think he has a pretty good idea of where he's going to go, but he's ready. He's ready to make this call. He's going to be at Florida this weekend. He'll hit Texas in mid-June. He'll have a decision soon after that. I think it could be a Texas-Florida battle.
Yeah, we're getting down to it. Now we're going to hit on a couple other guys that are also making cuts. But first, Texas fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, so we have one of the top edges in the country, Luke Wafel. He cut his list to a final 5. Where would you put Texas amongst that 5?
I think Texas has done a really good job in this recruitment. I just think it's going to be tough to get past Penn State. I think Penn State's the leader in this recruitment. And I think Texas, a lot of these edge kids, a lot of these D linemen, they're seeing what Texas is putting in the NFL. They're seeing what they're putting on the field, especially in the last few seasons. So it's very alluring. Mm-hmm. Then you got Kyle Flood going up and watching Wafel play basketball, getting closer to the family, building that relationship. If Penn State didn't have that family tie, I think Texas would be squarely in it. And I still think they are. But it's going to be hard, I think, to overcome Penn State. I think State College has the upper has that thing right now. I know Michigan felt pretty confident, before the brother transferred. But right now, I think Texas looks good. I just think Penn State looks a little better.
Another one that Texas is looking good for, and this is a bit of a surprise to me because we talk about this prospect a lot on this channel, but usually it's with Notre Dame. One of Notre Dame's top targets, Caden Finley, got a prediction to Texas over the weekend. Are the Horns going to steal one from the Irish? Because, Justin, I had him penciled into the Irish's class.
Listen, before I had a conversation with a source a couple of days ago, I kind of thought he was trending Notre Dame as well. But I've always kind of, almost RPM like for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But just understand, from Texas standpoint, that's their main guy on the big board. They don't really miss on those main guys, in-state Texas legacies. Now, I think the family's a little split. Mom might prefer Notre Dame. Dad might prefer Texas. Caden's his own man. He's going to make this call. I believe it's July 4th is when the fireworks are going to come off. But just catching up to sources and talking to some of our staff at Inside Texas, we feel like it's Texas to beat. We think that's going to be the team to beat there. Now, look, Notre Dame has done a tremendous job. I can't tell you how many times he's been to South Bend, like maybe 3 or 4 times already this spring, and obviously he'll be back. His last official visit is going to be in Austin for June 20th to the 22nd.
Right.
It's going to come down to Texas and Notre Dame. Those are the 2 last standing. If you ever watch Caden's game, there's a more athletic Jaden Greathouse right there. You can see that fit in South Bend. But again, Texas is going to go all in on Caden Finley. They already have. I think they're going to, and Notre Dame has done a real good job with NIL. I feel like in this cycle, I think Texas is going to dip into that as well. Just understand, it could go either way, guys. It could go either way. But there are people close to Texas that feel very confident Finley's going to be a Horn. And so just based off of that and some of the trend lines, it's going to be it's going to be something we've got to pay attention to. Look, this thing could tilt either way over the next month leading up to July 4th. But there are people at Texas that they're like, look, that's our number 1 priority guy, and we aren't going to lose him.
Well, Notre Dame feels the same, so we're going to see this one shake out over the next 6 weeks. All right, one more prospect that has pared his list down. That's massive offensive tackle Malachi Lee. He's from Hawaii, the number 10 ranked offensive tackle in America. Has Texas in there. But, Justin, we know Texas is in great shape with Felix Ojo, John Turntine as well, both in-state targets. So how does Malachi Lee kind of factor into this offensive line puzzle for the Horns? Inside Scoop listeners, I got to tell you about a company that makes this show possible. It's Rhoback Activewear. The only way to describe Rhoback is best fit, best feel. And for those who are not familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. With novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and quarter zip designs from some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else in the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They are both super comfortable. They have an elastic waistband and a great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for everyday movement. Rhoback also has been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. So use code JOSH on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off all new custom orders through the end of this week. Let's spell it out for you. RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with promo code JOSH.
I think he's too good to pass up. I think Kyle Flood sees a beautiful future NFL prospect there, understands he's got Max right in the class, understands they're in a great spot for five-star Felix Ojo, for elite offensive tackle John Turntine III. Like they're in a great spots there, but it's hard to not continue to have contingencies. You know, a lot of Texas fans they'll see a new offer and they'll think, well, what happened with the other kid in that position? It's just Texas being thorough. It's being strategic, and they've got some connections over on the islands. You know, Leona LaFalle, the starting linebacker, is from there, and so and Malachi's got a closeness there, and then plus you watch him, and he'd be a hard kid to turn down. 6'7", 280 pounds, moves beautifully. I mean, he's a big, strong kid, and so I think Texas is in it. That Final Four he dropped is pretty significant. I think Michigan's going to be in it as well. Obviously, all four of them, but Texas is just making sure they're checking all boxes, because you never know with injuries, with transfers, with anything can change in recruiting. We've seen that. You want to make sure you're covering your bases, and I think that's why they've offered the Aaron Thomas kid out of Arizona and Grayson McKay out of Pennsylvania. They're just making sure that they've got contingency plans in case something happens. If Malachi Lee wanted to commit to Texas, I think it would be really hard for them to say no.
Right.
Like, he could be a numbers buster, and then that could essentially bring in 4 offensive tackles in this one cycle. Now, they only took one last year. Nick Brooks, who actually looked really good. He's been proving me wrong. He can play offensive tackle at the next level, and he's did well in the spring. But this is just Kyle Flood. You know, he sees kids and falls in love for good reasons, for all the right reasons. Malachi Lee is just fantastic, maybe as much upside as anybody in the country. And so Texas is gonna run that race, just to make sure, in case they want to break for emergency, they're going to run that race to stay in it.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Justin Wells. For more, go to Inside Texas.